So I was busy this morning, and when I got on, I saw the scoreline. Navi beat Heroic 2-1. And I thought, that's not that surprising, that's what you're expecting. But then I actually looked at the games, and Navi were down 0-1, and then they were down 8-1 on map 2, and still somehow managed to win. And that's not exactly what you're expecting, although I suppose it is kind of what you're expecting at this point with Navi, with the number of ridiculous comebacks they've been getting recently. But I still have to wonder exactly how that happened. And there's a little bit of misplaying from Navi on their first half, of course, and there's quite a bit of misplaying from Heroic on their second half. And the question, of course, is the same that I posited yesterday. Did they choke, or was this just Navi playing a lot better? And I think the answer in this case is that I think actually Heroic really did choke a little bit, and then Navi showed their experience in the third map. Now, of course, map 3 was Mirage, which is, Navi's on this ridiculous tear on Mirage, of course, so you're kind of thinking to some extent that Navi should win map 3, even just without any other information around it. Unfortunately, Heroic's map pool just isn't the strongest against Navi at this point, I think. You would want them to play Nuke, but their Nuke has been quite weak recently. But regardless, quick kill from Tezes, Dexter picks up one as well, all of a sudden 5v5 into a 3v5 into a 3v3, Dexter with another nice shot, and Nertz finishes it all off. I mean, that's a round that Navi didn't really miss any shots there, but at the same time, I think their timings were just clearly a little bit off. They shouldn't be allowing Dexter in the middle of the open there to pick up 2 kills before getting taken down. Of course, riflers can obviously multi-kill, and sometimes you just can't stop that. They can just hit some really nice shots back to back, but I think you can almost universally prevent, at least if there's no cover nearby, an Opper picking up more than 1 kill without being traded. Of course, the weapons for Navi weren't perfect, but yeah, I think they can, if they played that one back over, they probably close it out themselves. Then you have an op in the hands of Wonderful, but you really just mostly have pistols to work with, so not exactly what you're hoping for. I mean, the goal in this situation is for Wonderful to find a kill before they really realize what's happening with the op, because once he doesn't get the first kill, they should be able to track him throughout the map. But then he manages to come back around and still find a miraculous double. I mean, Wonderful had a really, really strong final here. He should not be getting away with the first one. Nertz should be trading him every time there. Then it's just an insane shot to finish off Nertz. And at the same time as that, I mean, this shouldn't be possible by Tezes, because Tezes is alone lurking out B. He's trying to make contact, right? They know the op was on Cat, so they know there's no op B, which means they have, it's probably pretty light on B. Tezes gets a nice angle onto JL, who's just found the wrong timing in the open there, and then he kills Bitch. JL probably just shouldn't be in the open at that timing. If he's still in the corner there, or if he gets out a little bit sooner, then Tezes, there's no way Tezes should just never be allowed to get to there. And I think when people say that Navi looks like they're kind of burnt out, that's the type of thing you're thinking about. Just like kind of obvious errors that it's not like JL doesn't know that was kind of a problem, right? You ask JL what happened there right after he dies. He knows immediately what the problem was, right? But you're kind of burnt out. You're making dumb mistakes. You're not thinking during the round, and you're just kind of messing things up. And I think when you look at Navi, when you actually look at them, if you have any baseline to how they normally play, I think it's easy to understand that they're just making mistakes that they generally never make, And that's 5-0 for Heroic right off the bat. You have a CT timeout, and this is where you're thinking, okay, I'm a Navi fan. I want Navi to win this one. This is where the comeback starts. You can still pull off a 7-5 half. It's far from unwinnable. We just have to pick up this round here. Nice little nade for the cross, by the way, bouncing it high so it's a little harder to see. And it doesn't block the entire cross, but it does block long enough that like as a T, you can't know how many CTs crossed, right? There's a question mark in the air, even if it doesn't block the entire timing. So, of course, you have the standard kind of little bit of long pressure for Heroic. You've got utility being thrown by Ime, and then he's going to immediately rotate back around to Cat. This is kind of like pretty much standard nowadays. Nertz got down mid very quickly, very, very quickly, and I think Ime is not really expecting this timing. When the flash was thrown mid doors, you're kind of more expecting players like in this area, maybe a little bit further down, and maybe in lower. That's really the idea behind the flash there, but Nertz got down middle. I think he went through Fast Cat and just got there before Ime's ready for it, right? And I think one of the problems is that with so many events back to back to back, Navi are kind of running some of the same timings, and I think that's getting kind of figured out by teams as well, where they can try and find gaps that are available and haven't been fixed by Navi. But then Nertz, he's completely alone. He moves up, he's smoked off, but his team puts pressure on long, and as his team puts pressure on long, he actually just drops down. I think that's a T smoke, so I think there's a CT smoke here and a T smoke here, and the T smoke gives him cover as well as the drop smoke. It gives him cover to drop straight down. So it's kind of an interesting lurk play. Alexi B wasn't looking at the exact right timing, and there's just a small gap for Nertz to actually get through there, and that means he's going to be in a great position. He would have killed Wonderful if Wonderful hadn't been taken out by his teammate, and then somehow actually Alexi B almost gets away here, but it ends up going Nertz's way eventually as he's a little patient. That's one where like you're in a pug, someone panics and they think, oh my god, he's getting away, and they end up giving the kill right back. But well done by Nertz. And this is where, as a Navi fan, you're probably thinking this game is like getting close to being over, right? 6-0 down. Somehow Wonderful has an op yet again. Did he save that? He didn't even say. He somehow Wonderful has an op again on, you know, kind of a half buy. I mean, Wonderful does have an amazing series. You've got Jail on 0 kills so far, not exactly what you're hoping to see. And you don't win this round, it feels like the game is out of reach. You go down 7-0, I mean 7-1 even. I've seen that scoreline before. I've seen it. You just think there's no chance, right? I mean, Dust 2 is simply not a side. Maybe on like if you're CT side of Anubis, maybe you're thinking maybe we've got a chance here. But your CT side Dust 2, it's not that T-sided. It really feels like all hope is starting to be lost. And not only that, but Wonderful towards A, well, it looks like Heroic are going to be hitting over towards B this time around, and that means the op is, well, I guess you could call it a bonus that the op is going to be, they can save it, right? I guess that's a bit of a bonus, but realistically what you want is you want them to walk into the op and then the op can find 4 kills. That's what you would really want. Instead, although, I mean, this isn't unwinnable. I've had pugs where we've lost this exact setup before, but, you know, with good spacing, with a nice first kill, this one really goes, it falls apart if that first kill goes the way of Navi. That's how those really fall apart. But it's really good spacing and really good like discipline, I guess I'm thinking from Heroic, where they have clear angles that they're looking at. They're all ready for different things. And as long as off of the first kill, if they had the first player die instead of getting that kill, they hadn't like panicked and all started changing the locations they're watching, it's every reason to believe that they probably could have still taken B even if the first player died. But that's one that you need that first kill going your way, and it was just a nice shot from Kixin to open things up. So you've got a 7-0 scoreline. And again, I mean, have to be fairly happy that you've got the op in the hands of Wonderful, and he knows exactly what's been going on, right? Nertz has been going for that fast cat over and over and over. He's been waiting for that op pick and then pushing down mid right afterwards, which is a really great timing. And I assume probably an anti-strat to get down mid just a little faster than Ime is expecting. So a nice play from Wonderful, but Wonderful actually gives it right back up a little bit later, going for the same peak, but Degster's watching him this time. And Degster has been playing kind of lights out recently, and he can get some aggressive frags that you're not really expecting, where he's just not at all worried taking some kind of crazy, I don't want to say crazy, but very aggressive duels. Now, Bit is another player that's not at all worried to take some pretty aggressive duels, and this is a very interesting timing to go for one. Walking out mid, he knew Degster was in towards, he was watching the mid cross, right? So he crouches under it, thinking maybe he's still holding it, clears out tunnels entirely, and then the CT smoke throws off Heroic, so it stops them from moving forward, and Alexi B can use that to grab a kill. So now you got a 4v3, but not only is it 4v3, you also know exactly where the majority of the Ts are. You can have Bit kind of lock down this mid play, and you can have 3 players completely ready for the long cross. So this is, theoretically, it's basically a 1 round. There should almost be no way for Heroic to win this. You've got even some nades for the cross, which is going to make it even harder. They do eventually get their way across. JL is here with an op, though, and it's actually Ime from Cat that gets things done for the most part. So 7-1 scoreline. I'm watching this. I'm still thinking like, okay, what do they do here? Maybe they go like 7-5. They start the real comeback here. It's like it's gonna go well, but Bit swings out mid, gets traded, which is fine. but Ime doesn't get the trade back. So Ime actually just ends up going down 3-8. JL is 0-7 at the moment, so it turns into a 4v3. And then Kicksan with this little lurk, I think he caught a glimpse of JL there. Kicksan 17 health, so he's not trying to overextend. JL gets the kill. Kicksan has the flank, but JL finishes the reload and finishes him off. And that's one where, I mean, Kicksan wants this one back, I think, because he had the drop on JL. Of course, JL, I actually had finished his reload. I thought it took a little bit longer than it did. So Kicksan just didn't quite find the exact right timing to grab that kill. But now you've got a 3v2. JL, though, is kind of locked out of B, and Tezes is in a pretty good location if JL does try to walk back into B, that Tez is going to be able to find the kill. And with the smoke coming down at the exact same time, now Wonderful doesn't have a chance to move back in, and he's only got 10 HP as well. So kind of best case scenario, he can molly the bomb planter, but Tezes doesn't force the plant. He lets Shush work lower at the same time. That kind of shuts everything down, and Tezes finishes it off. And this is one where you're looking at it and you're like, wow, this is why Pimp said Tezes is the best player in Denmark. Which, did he really say that? Someone said he said that, and I was like, that's crazy. That's crazy. But yet, someone else confirmed that he said that. I think Pimp said Tez is the best player in Denmark. He definitely was absolutely playing like it for the majority of this event, and that's why I had him in my fantasy. I was thinking, if he continues playing like that, then they're going to win, and they're going to beat Navi, and then he's going to be in the final, and nobody else is going to pick Tezes, so I'm going to get 1,000,000 fantasy points for winning this. But well, we'll see how that goes, right? I haven't spoiled it yet, have I? Only 5 different times I've spoiled it. Who knows who wins this game? It could go either way. Anyway, we got to boost up for a wonderful 8-1. You're still, I mean, this just really felt like this is borderline. I don't know, borderline. It's borderline turn off the game levels of one-sided. However, there have been some glimpses where Heroic have left some openings, and Navi have kind of fumbled the bag a little bit, a couple of times. So it's not like Heroic are playing perfect. They're doing some things very right, and I think they're doing a very good job so far. But at the same time, if Navi was on point, I think Navi is a much closer game. Like it's, whatever, 5-4 or something instead of 8-1. But then again, another 5v3 for Navi. I mean, they lost one of these in the very first gun round. You have Tezes. He's going to look for a timing to come through the smoke here. Finds a pretty good timing, but the immediate trade from Ime means the timing doesn't matter all that much. But still, it puts it in a not unwinnable situation, and Shush almost finds Bit in the shoulder, but now they know exactly the setup. 1v3 from Dexter, who has been actually performing quite well with the rifle recently, but just a quick trade. And then you've got 8-2. So maybe it's 8-4. Maybe they come back quickly off of that. You're thinking maybe, but that's not quite what the scoreline's actually going to end up being. And because of the round going the way it went, I mean, that was 2 players left alive. You actually have an MP9 for JL trying to hold on to B. And as long as Heroic don't hit B, it's not the end of the world. But certainly it's almost a better buy from Heroic than it is from Navi. And this fast play up towards long, Wonderful kind of trapped in here. He gets smoked off by his teammate, which is what you want because he was getting mollied. You're looking for that exact timing. But just the chaos created allows the kill to go down on him. He gets fucking knifed. And then Ime is essentially trapped on plat, and wow, okay, just all the kills go Heroic's way in a matter of like 2 seconds. That's one of those ones where it just turns into chaos, and Heroic are just masters of the chaos. They were born in it, molded by it, some would say. Nice little missed smoke by Shush doesn't help things out. I believe Nertz probably had one of the better spawns. A lot of teams recently are taking like their best B spawns and going for a quick play across and getting to the left side. Sometimes they'll just stay there. Sometimes they'll use that to try and get a pick, especially if it's their opper. They'll kind of post up waiting for someone to jump on platform. Both I think are pretty reasonable, and being in that position gets you a lot of information based on sound as well. But if you look at the buy from Navi, I mean, this is looking like it should be a 10-2 half. You've got 4 MP9s and a scout from Navi, and Heroic, I mean, they're not over committing to either side. So it looks like they might even, I was thinking for a second they might actually bait out a push into B tunnels, because you got 3 players for Navi towards B, and at the same time there was some pressure from Heroic towards long, right? So I was kind of expecting a rotation to come in, but Tezes can't quite get that kill. Nertz is on his own, so he really can't commit here, which means, I mean, only 2 players going up mid to B in a situation like that. You can take risks like that sometimes, but they're not they're not looking for 3 players B, right? Even with 2 players B, what you really need is you need Tezes to find that initial entry, and then, oh my god, JL jumping, okay. You kind of need Tezes to get that initial entry and then go from there, because that allows Nerds to put on some pressure from tunnels. But especially because 3 players, not only is it 3 players with guns, obviously, but usually that means you're going to have an extra smoke. And probably Nerds got re-smoked off there a 3rd time and wasn't necessarily expecting it, which makes it a little bit harder to find the exact right timings. You don't find that first kill, even if it was only 2 players B, they were probably screwed there. But here's where the comeback actually starts. 9-3. Heading into CT side Dust 2. Obviously, it goes without saying, pistol round's pretty important for Navi. Now, Navi do have a pretty high pistol round win rate on T side. It's actually extremely high. I'm not sure how it's done in this run, though. In their last couple of events, it was like 75% a couple of events back, which was unbelievable. And I would usually credit that. I mean, they've got some great players, but I would credit that at least partially probably to anti-stratting. And, I mean, some shots being missed here, and not only are some shots being missed, but you actually have a 4A stack from Heroic, so the way it's looking, you would expect it to go their way, but then Bit comes out through long, and things kind of turn back pretty quickly. And this is why people, I mean, I feel like that's a decent example of why people will say pistol rounds are pretty random, because the majority of the kills, I feel like, in that round could have gone either way pretty much most of the time. Like, I'd say a decent 30% of the time, the players that got those kills, almost all of them die faster. Like, probably about 30% of the time, they get shot a little faster than they did. It feels like almost every kill ended up being like 5 bullets in, you know? But whatever. You got the force buy from Heroic going for the fast play up towards mid. They actually do get the initial kill, and not only that, but Shush gets tunnels control. Little aggressive trying to take down Ime, but Nurse is getting pressured towards long at the same time, so it does make quite a bit of sense to go for that type of thing. But then you've got this little flank here coming from Kixan and Tezes, locking Navi into long. Now the question is, yeah. So I was going to say, the question is, can Dexter shut them into long, right? Because one of the problems is, in a situation like this, where they kind of know that they're getting flanked, I think they actually did know that a flank, like the mid push, was coming in. If you need to actually make your team secure in knowing that they don't have to push for a timing on that flank. And as soon as Dexter gets hit there for 90 and misses a shot, that means that Navi could accelerate towards the A site. And if that flank doesn't activate earlier, then if Navi just pushed towards A site, Dexter has 10 health, they most likely kill Dexter, and then there's one player kind of rotating in, you've lost the A site, and then you're kind of in a terrible position. So as soon as Dexter gets lit there, they're feeling on the flank like they actually need to activate a little bit faster, and Navi are just completely ready for that. It seemed like as soon as Navi pushed Dexter off of that angle, I think they kind of knew that flank was likely coming in at the same time as well. By the way, dude, if you're doing a run boost, jump once and then run across. None of this like jump on my second jump, none of this when I shoot, none of this at 10 seconds. Just jump once and your teammate below you can see when you jump and they can time it themselves. The guy on the bottom is the only person that should have any skill involvement in a run boost, okay? The guy on the bottom, he stands up, you jump, he runs at a timing where he knows that you're going to be able to run alongside him. You're done. You know, ugh. It was rough. Whatever. Another interesting buy. It seems like teams were calling this, I think they called this the Furia buy, or were they calling this the Liquid buy? Maybe I'm thinking of a different buy that people were calling the Furia buy, but this is just becoming so common now, where you have one guy with a little bit of extra money, and you have him buy up something like an M4. You have him buy up, and you're just trying to make sure that you can get some economic damage done, even if you lose the round. And then you usually, what you want to do is you put him with another player. So Nertz is together with Kixan. So if they can't find some economic damage, if they can't find the round win, you can always have these guys save, and if Nertz dies, Kixan can pick up that M4 and recycle it. You can also have Kixan do what he does here, which is Kixan takes the dangerous engagement, and he actually goes for that play where a player is likely to die, and in doing so, he makes sure that Nertz with the M4 is continuously in positions where Nertz can actually win the duel, right? He's not taking, Nertz doesn't have to take overly risky engagements. Now, in this case, Nertz, I mean, when they go to your bomb site, but you're stuck in pit, it feels a little bit awkward because I think he probably just wants to save here. He gets the one kill, but he can't really push out because there could be a second player there easily, but it would be kind of wild if somehow Dagster gets across, gets over, gets an M4, and then the bomb blows up on the A site, but you have 2 players saved towards A. That's actually kind of wild. It actually works. I mean, that's one of the options of things that could happen. I feel like that's a lower percentage situation where you somehow have your B player or your mid player rotate over through B, T-spawn, go back around long, and get an extra gun into the following round because you bought a gun. That's kind of wild. It's a little bit wild. It's a little bit crazy, but you know, that's the way things go sometimes, right? Especially at IEM Rio. I keep having people tell me these are fixed games when they're clearly, was Furia fixing? Was Furia pretending to be bad for 4 years in a row just to beat Navi? It was just all a fix. It was fake. It was a fugazi. Whatever. I feel like I've had so many people in my comments be like, these are fixed games. How can you not tell? Brother, stop. Okay, 9-6. I mean, people hate on MR12. You can hate on MR12 all you want. I think it's fucking great, okay? Because a comeback is always possible. And in MR15, a comeback was always possible too. I think, honestly, the biggest thing about MR12 that really seems to make a big difference is that, look, no round is a throwaway round in MR12. You can be up 8-1 and you lose a couple of rounds and then you lose the second pistol and all of a sudden it's 9-6. It's a very winnable game from Navi. You know, it's very winnable. There is no round where it's like, okay, well, you know, we can take this round off and we'll focus on next round. That's why so many teams are doing these buys where they have that op just with pistols, they have the M4 just with pistols to make sure they can get some damage done and maybe have a chance at the round, right? No round is forgotten, which just makes it so much more entertaining because there's no round where you're like, I just turned my brain off for this one. But anyways, quick rotate into B. They only had 1 player there initially, but Nertz gets there just in time to actually get into the bomb site, and Degster was there as well. But you know who else is there? Ma fucking Wonderful is there, and with 6 seconds on the clock, he's going to get the bomb plant. I mean, this isn't completely unwinnable. Because of that smoke, you can see Kixan was worried about Wonderful, like, walking out the window, even though, you know, there wasn't time for him to do that end plant, but they do eventually get the kill. And they have the option to go for the double op, right? Because Degster died with an op, Wonderful had an op as well. It's actually an interesting question. Do they go for the double op or do they just stay single? They're going to go for the double op. And most likely Navi does know that, so I'm actually interested in seeing, and interesting timeout, I'm interested in seeing what they actually try and decide to run against the double op setup, because double ops on Dust 2 are one of the more scary things to deal with, you know, because in theory you kind of really want to have your opper towards middle, because you can actually, the sight lines are so long, but middle is so hard to, or so easy to deal with for T's to actually push you off of these angles. They smoke mid doors, they go for like a mid B split, which have been struggling recently, but I think one of the reasons they're struggling is you're no longer running into oppers in mid B. I feel like opping, dealing with a mid B split as an opper is often quite hard to do because it's so easy to get caught off on timing. Now, if you have the right timings, you can shut it down completely, but it's easy to get caught off on timing. So then you're like, okay, well, we'll have our opper go game helper. That's another really great place for oppers to be. But then when you're rifling mid, it just feels a little bit harder to actually get things done if your opponents are a little bit kind of like they leave openings. Maybe they can try and duel you out mid. Maybe they can, you know, there's options that your opponents can go for if they know that there's no opper in mid. So when you have an op mid and an op A, then you're feeling pretty fucking good about the situation, right? And yet again, you kind of have I mean, I wouldn't call this necessarily a B stack, but you have a player mid towards mid, right? Your A rotator is on the mid side, and you have 2 players towards B. This is, again, if you're heroic, you've kind of made a pretty reasonable read. You're in a pretty good situation here. Dexter picks up the first kill. However, Tezes, because he got spammed to 14 health at the beginning of the round, he's not really able to try and force through, and Shush just has to land that. Shush is, I mean, you can't just let a guy come through the smoke on you. And then a really nice bait by Ime, actually, kind of that little jiggle. He knows that he got spotted there, and he holds his nerve. He just waits that extra couple of seconds, and that means that, like, he was so close. Your Dexter, you're like, he's gonna jiggle this again. I'll kill him on the second jiggle, right? And the third, well, I'll kill him on the third jiggle. The third jiggle never comes, and just a really, really nice bait there by Ime to open up that timing for the player to come in through middle. But at the same time, I mean, that's another one. If Shush just gets that kill, this round, the whole complexion of that round is different. And the whole complexion of the game is completely different, right? This game could go a completely different way if that kill gets picked up on a guy with the Tech 9 coming through a smoke. And it's not even like Shush got insta-gived, right? It was a little bit awkward because he did like run through the smoke into a corner. So it was a little awkward, but I think at the same time, that kill goes his way 9 times out of 10. But I think that's the reality. Like, when I made this video before on like, did ZywOo choke? ZywOo missed a shot or two, but I feel like it's kind of standard for, even the best players in the world. I think when you're on a stage and you've got like the crowd screaming, I feel like it's not that uncommon for a player. I mean, even off stage, but on stage to miss an extra shot or two. I feel like that's almost like everyone misses an extra shot or two. It's just a matter of like, you don't whiff super easy ones and you make sure that, you only miss like one shot that you might hit in a group stage. I feel like to some extent, almost this might be a hot take. Okay. I do feel like almost everyone generally plays better in group stages. If you want to see the best DS, that's probably in group stages, especially because you have no crowd that's kind of like changing the way you're playing in the game, right? They're screaming when you're flanking. You're like worried about that. You're worried about hearing the commentators, all this stuff. Really nice shot by Ime, by the way. Then Kixaz in a decent spot. He's in a decent spot. It's a good spot to pick up 1. A little tough to deliver 2 from there, and that's one where, given the fact that Degster died without getting a kill, he kind of needed to deliver 2 if they wanted a reasonable chance of the round. When he doesn't, then just the save is pretty much reasonable as well, right? Am I crazy? Do teams not just play better in the group stage? Like, one of the things people talk about is like when you're under pressure, you end up playing down to the level of your practice. So if you practice badly, you're going to play badly under pressure because you can only fall back into what you know. And I feel like that's kind of saying like in a match, you're not going to play necessarily as good as in practice. Well, actually, I don't know if that's true. I take that one back. In practice, sometimes you're not taking it too seriously. All right, Tezes gets kind of caught out, a nice nade timing, but he still gets his kill, and that's what really matters there. As long as you get 1 kill, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, 4v4 theoretically favors the T's, but I feel like that saying has kind of been stretched to its limit. Because while in theory, talking purely about numbers, a 4v4, 3v3, like if you trade off players, more of the map is free, which means it does favor the T's because it's easier for them to find openings and gaps in the defense. But at the same time, 4v4s aren't all created equal, right? If you get a 4v4 but you get a lot of information, then it's fine. It's not a big deal. If you get a 4v4 but you only got that 4v4 because you were buying time for a rotate and now you're stacking the bomb site, totally fine, right? Really very heavily depends on the situation. But JL not able to hold onto the op, and this time around they opted not to go for the double op, right? Like Degster already had an op in his hands. Yeah, Degster already had an op in his hands, I think, unless that was Dexter's op in Wonderful's hands. I think Degster already had an op in his hands, and they decided not to go for the double op. It didn't necessarily go that well for them in the previous round, although when they did lose that round, I think Dexter got a kill at the op on that play that they lost, but still, opting not to go for it. I feel like a double op is most effective when your opponents don't see it coming, when you buy up that second op, right? Or if they just don't know if you picked it up or not. When you can game plan strategize against the double op, I feel like it loses a lot of its value. I mean, I think that's especially true on like Inferno. If you ever double op on Inferno, it better be a surprise. I feel like the Mirage is like kind of middle ground. I feel like Dust 2, maybe Dust 2 you can go for a double op, and even if they know it's still very strong, but depends on how strong your secondary opper is, I suppose. But here we've got pretty good map control for Navi. They don't have a great buy, and this is a round that they actually highlighted on the analyst desk, so I will mention that. I try to mention when I can that if I get anything from the analyst desk, so I give them the credit they deserve. And by that, I mean I got this round completely wrong, and it's the next round that they highlighted. That's... Guys. Oh my god, when you look at that, it's the round the analysts talked about. Oh, it's 33 seconds left on the clock. That's crazy. 4v3 for Heroic. Navi, they have a couple of Molotovs somehow, but they don't have, nothing's perfect. And the smoke gets thrown by Tezes at like just the right moment, right? That's a smoke. It's going to waste like half of their time on the clock before they can go. Wonderful has 29 health and JL has 50. They're in the worst possible situation. Is there an extra nade and spawn that would actually end the round? This is just such a terrible situation for them. Dexter gets that kill. He actually moves his way back over to long to check long. He doesn't check all the way wide. He holds this for a little bit longer. Did he spot Bit there? No, he doesn't spot Bit there. He just finds an interesting timing to fall back on. Bit continues forward. Dexter falls back into car, and Dexter must be thinking here, there's just no way they're coming out long, but Bit is coming out long, which means as Bit continues forward, he could just be looking long, right? It's very reasonable that he could be looking long and then playing off of contact. And if he is looking long, if he gets into a fight with Bit, then Dexter can actually pivot and make sure that that kill goes their way. Instead, Bit moves out long, gets the kill onto Tezes on ramp, and there's only 10 seconds left here. So there's no way for Bit to actually make his way up to the long cross in time. Dexter just needs to be focused on Cat here. That's all he needs to be focused on. And in fact, Kicksan can probably call that they're running up Cat. They have to go up Cat. If there's a player long, they simply cannot plant the bomb. But Dexter is actually going to go for the peek out towards long and gets killed from Cat. And I mean, if you look at the timing, Wonderful only actually gets this bomb plant with like 7 seconds left. It's like... if Wonderful had gotten killed instead of immediately getting that kill onto Dexter, if Dexter had got one there before dying, then there's a good chance that they would actually just win that round, especially because Kicksan could just jump up and stop the player running to the bomb site. Very unfortunate situation. And that's just a round that realistically, there's almost no way for that round to be lost. In fact, in my eyes, there's almost no reason for Dexter not to just sit here, if you want, like, to be honest, because Tezes, there's a smoke on Cat still. It's not like Tezes has to be worried about like all these different things that could be happening. There's a smoke on Cat. As long as that smoke is up, I think there's no realistic reason that Dexter shouldn't just be looking long from here, because what are you getting out of this? Tezes can hold that smoke just as well as you, and you may as well just be like holding anti-flash. Like, what if they throw a really sick flash that blinds both of you and you both lose the angle? Isn't it just better for you to be looking here and then you pivot back over? I don't know. But definitely once Dexter goes to look Cat, then if Tezes just looks long, then you're totally fine. But at the same time, I can kind of sympathize with the idea that there's like 17 seconds left on the clock. Are you really thinking in that situation they're coming long? I guess you do have to keep in mind, as a pro player, you have to keep in mind that timing is always possible, and that player long might even come out long because the timing is so narrow that you're thinking, okay, maybe at this timing they're not going to be worried about this anymore, and I can shoot them in the side to provide a little bit of relief to my players so that they can move up Cat a little more easily. Unfortunate situation though, ends up with the scoreline being tied up. After being up 8-1, score's tied. And not only is it tied, but this buy from Heroic is not exactly perfect, right? They've got the op in Dexter's hands, but they don't have a ton of utility to work with. Nurtson towards lower. If he dies here, this is going to be pretty rough, but he does pick up the 1 kill, and Dexter's here towards Cat to try and shut it down, maybe find a second. They actually end up giving it up entirely, which is fine. Tezes still has long control, so it's not really a big deal, and Dexter can still move into plenty of different situations or positions if he wants. I really like that, by the way. Sometimes it's like, I'm never going to use this utility if I go this way, so why don't I just drop it somewhere that someone can actually retrieve it if I do die? I've done this a few times recently. I think it's a really smart play, where it's just like, in this situation, I know I'm never using this utility until I come back anyways. You may as well drop it. I really like that idea. But Dexter on the rotate over. Quite a nice kill right directly on a Bit. And then you have a 4v3 for Heroic, and then they've got every option in the book. They've fully shut down the long play, so Dexter rotates right back over, grabs himself the smoke, and then you've got Wonderful trying to get something done if he can. It's actually JL towards B that picks up the kill on Shush Pushing, and this is another thing. I wasn't sure what round they were talking about, but I think the analyst desk talked about this round as well, and it is, I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, so 4v3, you still have a smoke on Dexter. Dexter's in position. He's in a pretty good spot. And they go for the tons push. Yeah, I mean, so I can kind of understand the idea behind this, because you only have 2 players for mid and B, and they have no utility is the key here. They have no smoke, no molly, right? So if the T's just come around, smoke this off, and start working out mid to B, or for example, if Wonderful was to walk out mid and just look for a pick on the guy towards window, and this guy is just spotting it, they could, with a minute left, it's very possible that could happen. And if that, if Wonderful walks out, how are you supposed to really spot this without giving an opportunity potentially for that Opera to find a kill? It could be kind of awkward to deal with. So I can kind of understand the reason that they're thinking about this, especially because there was 2 players towards long, which means there's exactly maximum of 1 player in towards B tunnels, and you can definitely go for the trade on that player. But at the same time, people hold mid B plays with 2 players against 5 sometimes, right? Like, and they don't need to get every kill. It's not like they need to 2v3 get all 3 kills. They could, if they just hold the mid B play and go 2 for 2, that's still fine, and it's a 2v1 retake. It's very reasonable. I think maybe part of the reason they're going for that push is the idea that, like, not only do we want to win this round, we want to win this round with like 3 or 4 players alive so we can actually have enough money to buy next round. But I don't think that's fair in an 11-11 situation. I think that's something you're thinking about when you have the whole half in front of you and you can kind of sacrifice that type of thing. In this type of situation, I think if they just held B, if they just held with 2 players towards B and they just maybe they take a bit of a risk that maybe the Opera can walk out on them, then it's not that big of a deal. But they actually do convert this round anyways, so it's not the end of the world. I would guess, if I was to guess the reasoning behind that, I'm guessing it's because they know there's only 2 players towards long, and so basically, it's one of those 50-50 ideas, right? It's like, if they're going B, then there's only 1 guy in tunnels. We can probably trade on him anyways. And if they're not going B, then there's nobody in tunnels and we get that information immediately. So I can kind of see the reasoning behind it. I think it's not completely unreasonable, especially in a situation where you're thinking, I want to make sure that we have money to buy next round. I think that the problem is, I think that's more of a situation you're thinking of earlier on in the half when you still have to plan your economy for the next 5 rounds instead of just the next 1 round. Anyways, Nurse falls back, takes a nice clean little 60 damage through the molly, and although they did have some mid control, at the end of the day they end up with no mid control. Shush falls back out of tunnels as well, and they lose long control, so Navi's in a pretty comfortable situation here already. Although Navi, I like the idea here, by the way. Like, look, holding on to Cat is just not all that effective. It's just so easy to molly you off, push you off. But one of the more effective things you can do is you can try to push your opponents or fight your opponents in middle, because I think a lot of those engagements in middle are not really that favored for the Ts. You can catch them in a lot of situations where they're in the middle of the open, and it's very hard for Ts to go from like here and here, from like top mid on either side to actually into a reasonably safe position without being in the middle of the open for a very long time, completely able to get blinded very easily, right? It's hard. There's really there's no way around it. You're gonna have to be in the open for a reasonable period of time when you move through middle. So if you can catch people in mid like that, that's really what you're looking for, and you can really punish them very effectively. If you're playing with a team, the most effective thing you can do, the easiest kills you can get, is when you catch people in middle. You kind of catch them in transition, moving down middle, a good flash, and good teams will catch a lot of people in those areas. Of course, good teams will not get caught in those areas, so it's a levels thing, right? There's levels to it. But overtime happens already, and you have to feel like Navi kind of had the mental edge after being up or down 8-1 and then 9-3 and coming back into it. However, again, it was 9-6 after pistol round. It's not like it was like a completely unbelievable round differential at that point. I think the scoreline we should be thinking about isn't even necessarily the halftime scoreline. What's the scoreline after the first 3 rounds of the second half, right? Like 9-3 seems like a lot, but 9-6 doesn't, right? Now, if it was like 10-2, if Heroic had won pistol, and then it's like kind of crazy. Then it is an insane comeback. At the same time, there were several chances, I think, for Heroic to close that one out with a couple of plays from players. Like if Dexter had just held the right direction, I think there was 1 or 2 other plays as well where Heroic definitely could have closed that one out. And then once you go into overtime, I think the favorite is probably always the team that made the comeback. It's just they just have the momentum going their way. Then you have the hold from Dexter. He does pick up 1, but Kicksan is still on towards Platt in a pretty good position. A flash, I mean, he actually would have got the kill on a bit if he had peeked out a little bit further. I'm not sure if that was even his flash or his teammate's flash, though. And then nice from Kicksan. I mean, this is, if you could exemplify not getting hit as like one clip, this is probably one of them, where he peeks out towards Bit. Doesn't immediately hit this shot, right? Like this isn't an immediate kill, but he crouches right away after he doesn't hit it. And I want to see this from Bit's POV. Here's the peek. Oh, can you actually spam that? I didn't know. Yeah, so, okay. 2 bullets hit the wall behind where Kixan is as he's crouched. As he's crouched, Kixan has 2 bullets hit the wall directly behind where his head would have been that don't hit him, which is just like fucking Neo from the Matrix level bullet dodging evasion tactics. Like he actually just straight up dodged 2 bullets there. And that's the donk effect. That's not a donk slide. We all know that. It's not a donk slide. But that is this kind of idea that I think has been, I mean, it's been getting more and more popular over the years, of course. But I think especially donk has like brought it even more into the light that donk doesn't have the craziest time to damage or the craziest time to kill. But one of the things he does is he makes it very hard to hit him. So he's going to finish you off with like, he's got really, really strong spray control. He's got a lot of skills, and he's going to make it so that you don't kill him immediately. And Kixan's got that there too. Makes it very hard to deal with. First round, this is the kind of the classic, isn't it? People talk about this all the time. Liquid did this against FaZe when they were down, when they had that like 11-1 comeback FaZe on Mirage, where Liquid won the first round of OT heavily. They just dominated the first round of OT, converted it their way, and then got shut out the entire rest of overtime. I think they literally lost 16-13. And Navi, or Heroic doing the exact same thing. Well, not in the same style, but the same thing where Navi have a bit of a comeback. Navi do win the last round, although it was like kind of more even. It wasn't like a ton of rounds in a row, but the team that got comebacked on, the team that caught come on backed, they win the first OT round. It's the classic. It's like it happens every time. Okay, 13-13. Nurse dies immediately, but so does Bit. So you're in a 4v4. Still plenty of map control for Navi. They've already got someone bottom mid, but Nime is not out middle yet, so they don't have all of the control of everything. And you've got Dexter towards B with the Obs. So Dexter's in a pretty reasonable position to try and hold on if Navi were to try and lurk out. But Navi have tons of utility to work with. It's not like a situation like, 30 seconds left in a round where the situations are very different depending on how much utility that your opponents have actually used in a round, right? How much control have they gone for? The more control they've gone for and failed on, the more secure you can feel like you can hold it with an op. But off of that kill, then Shush is going to push in. And this is kind of more what you're expecting because JL is the Tun's lurker. And if we remember back to a couple of times on Heroic's T side, they only had 1 player in towards tunnels and they were going 2 or 3 from the mid to B side. And that's exactly what Navi's doing here, right? 1 player towards tunnels, 3 players mid to B. So Shush, off of Dexter's kill, knows that he's pretty safe to be going for that type of push. But Alexi B is going to turn it right back around. And Alexi B statistically is not that strong of an IGL. In fact, I think his stats aren't even really significantly better than Hooksy's. But Alexi B, one of the things he does have these games where, not only games, but he has like rounds where he pops off. He has games where he pops off, and he has rounds where he pops off like that, where he is very much capable of hitting some pretty crazy shots at different times, right? Depending on how things go. And that's one where if he hadn't hit none of these were really crazy shots, to be honest. I kind of oversold that a little bit almost. But at the same time, it's very possible that a different IGL in that situation could have just whiffed several shots and then they lose, So it's well done by Alexi to pick up a 3K at kind of like the exact right moment, the moment they needed him to find a few kills. They were into 2v4. Yeah, they were in a 2v4 there, although hard to necessarily call it a 2v4 in the situation where you're 2v4, but you're only 2v4 because your teammates just died right in front of you. So it's almost like a trade situation. Like the numbers don't describe the information and positioning you've gained off of losing those numbers. But I digress. I don't know if that's necessarily even that relevant. We've got a second half where immediately Heroic lose 2 players. Almost seems unwinnable. Just like an 8-1 scoreline, right? Am I right? Just kidding, this one actually is unwinnable. Dexter 1v3, it's unwinnable. An 8-1 scoreline, guys. The comeback is not possible. It is an 8-1 scoreline and a 2v5. These things are things that could not possibly be came back from. Fuck it. Okay, Heroic, 15-13 down. you know, this wouldn't be as big of a comeback as an 8-1 scoreline. They get kind of gifted that long control, but the re-aggression coming in from Bit and Alexi, they just have to find the right timing. Flash from Bit that Alexi doesn't peek on. I guess they're waiting for Heroic to make first contact, and then Alexi's going to turn around. So first contact from Bit. Alexi's supposed to be there, I think, to turn and catch the player swinging onto Bit, which is a smart idea. And he's actually got the support rotate over. So Ime from Plat, this is actually really it's an interesting play. I mean, this is one of those plays that can go completely wrong and look horrible if someone did, for example, let's imagine for a second, Bit just dies instead of getting a kill there, and then Alexi B turns and immediately gets flashed. Then it just looks like you're a bunch of fucking silvers. But I think the play seemed to make a lot of sense. There was a lot of logic behind that play. I don't think it was crazy, and it kind of went relatively okay in this round. You know, it didn't go as well as it could go, and definitely did not obviously go as bad as it can go. Now 2v2, make it a 1v2. Nerds. Wonderful's already injured, though, so he can finish him off pretty quickly. And then a very nice shot onto Jail. Nice shot onto Jail, finishes it off 15-14. And then you have the double op setup coming out of Navi. They didn't even get an op drop to them. This time they just go for it willy-nilly like. Ime dropped the op to Bit. Regardless of having a double op setup, they actually go for the very aggressive play up cat with 2 players. So they've got Ime makes first contact, gets a kill, ends up dying, and then Bit is going to get a trade back off of the nade. And I like the acceleration, like the very fast response from Heroic. They see that the mid collapse coming out of Navi. They go, okay, we're going to accelerate towards B. I mean, they were already playing in towards tunnels here anyways. Tezes sees where that smoke came from, so he's got a reasonable pre-aim as he comes through the smoke, but Jail just fucking lights them all up. And that's what I was thinking that Tezes could do in that round, that pivotal round, where Tezes was holding the cat smoke and Dexter let him die on the side. This is what I was thinking that Tezes would do if Navi came through the smoke, which is fucking light him up immediately. Just bang, 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 boom. 9-1. 8-1. It was 8-1. It was 8-1. And Heroic still lost and ruined my fantasy chances. Good game from Navi. They made a lot of great plays. Wonderful. Ends with 29 kills. Really well played from him. But just some small missteps from Heroic really let that one go. And then you go into map 3 being Mirage. You don't have much chance.